Hi, I'm Neshka Pfeiffer, the museum curator for the Stephen and Peter Sachs Museum here at the Missouri Botanical Garden. Today, we're going to go inside and take a special look at an exhibition that we have installed called Grafting the Grape, American Grapevine Rootstock in Missouri and the World. And we'll learn a little bit more about the special history that the museum plays here at the garden. Welcome inside the Sachs Museum. For those of you who haven't been inside before, this building is very special. It was designed in 1859, modeled after a building that was also a museum on the grounds of the Royal Botanic Gardens Kew. And it has a beautiful two-story main gallery, and right above us is a beautiful botanical mural. The building was closed for many years, and the museum was reopened in April 2018 to create a contemporary museum on the site of what was this once historic exhibition space on the grounds of the garden. The mural that you see is recreated from the original plaster mural that was painted by a local painter, a French immigrant painter named Léon Pomered. And today it includes plants that are grown around the garden. And in fact, we have special plants featured that have been in the collections, the live collections of the garden since the 1890s. One really special feature of the mural includes a grapevine species, a Native American grapevine species called Vitis estivalis, which today is more famously known as the Norton grape. And many of you who are fans of Missouri wine might actually have tasted that grape. And this is one of the species that we featured in the special exhibition, Grafting the Grape, American Grapevine Rootstock in Missouri and the World. Botanically, grapes are a part of the Vitaceae family, and they are found in temperate regions around the globe. The grape that we're most familiar with, that we drink wine from, is called Vitis vinifera. However, the Grafting the Grape exhibition features almost 16 different Native American grape species. What you see behind me is in fact the Vitis rotundifolia. It is very well known. It was also used by people before the European colonial settlers came to America and started making wine out of it. Different Native American nations throughout North America, in the Midwest and the Southeast, could find species like Vitis rotundifolia and use them for food. They would be foraged, they would be turned into dried grapes, or what we would call probably raisins today. They were also used as medicine. Different parts of the plant, such as leaves, could be used to make teas or other types of medicinal applications. And there were even other grape species that could actually be used as tools. One species that we have featured in the exhibition, the vine, which is quite hardy and strong, was actually able to be turned into a snare to catch deer. So for those of you who enjoy your evening glass of wine that maybe was from California or France or South Africa, one of the things that almost all of those vines have in common, those grapevines, is that they've been grafted on grapevine rootstock from Missouri. The exhibition, Grafting the Grape, actually tells the story of the intersection between the garden's history and today's modern winemaking industry, global winemaking industry. Many of you may know the name Dr. George Engelmann, who was Henry Shaw's first botanical advisor here at the garden. He was an avid botanist and collector of plants, and he was very interested in American grapevine species. In the mid to late 19th century in Europe, a problem started affecting the grapevines in those vineyards, and most specifically in France. The vines were dying, and nobody really knew why. And in fact, it was a pesky, tiny little insect that's just barely visible to the naked eye. And this particular insect, Grape phylloxera, was identified with the help of our George Engelmann, as well as the Missouri State entomologist, Charles Valentine Riley. The Grafting the Grape exhibition features in a section on the Grape phylloxera. It's a very difficult insect to identify and to see. The female lays eggs inside a gall that's very, very small, and inside, once those eggs hatch, the small phylloxera travel down to the roots, underground into the root system of the grapevine, and start nibbling and feeding on that there. And the difficulty in managing phylloxera is that you can't actually use pesticides against it. You basically have to use different types of manual techniques to keep it at bay. Grafting is in fact a historic technique that has been used since humans started cultivating crops such as fruits and orchards. However, it was not used for grape and wine berries until the late 19th century. Once the phylloxera epidemic devastated the French vineyards, and the Missouri botanists and viticulturists and the French vintners realized that they just needed to protect the roots from the grape phylloxera insect, they realized that they could graft the wine berry as the scion onto the American rootstock, and therefore be able to continue to grow wine throughout Europe, and now in fact throughout the rest of the world. 90% of the world's wine industry are grown on grafted rootstocks. Today, grafting is still a really important feature in contemporary scientific research. Garden-trained botanist Dr. Allison Miller, who today is a professor at the St. Louis University, as well as a principal investigator on a large NSF-funded grant, Vitis Underground, at the Danforth Plant Science Center, is currently researching with her team the effect of the American rootstock on the final European vine berry. They've found that the chemical compounds are affected by the rootstock. The different minerals and materials that the rootstock get from the soil actually do change what the final grapevine berry results in, and then eventually also change the actual flavor of the wine. As climate change affects where wine berries are able to be grown, it's likely that this research will continue because different rootstocks are necessary for different types of climates and environments, as most likely this grapevine growing industry will move north from where it currently is situated around the world. The Garden's Peter Raven Library shared several items with the exhibition, one of them specifically being a catalog called the Bushbird Catalog that the Missouri company of Bush and Meissner and Sons created together with George Engelman to identify all of the different American grapevine rootstock species that could be grown in their nursery and that were eventually sold and sent across to France for the vintners there to start grafting all of their European grapevine onto American rootstock in the late 19th century. The Garden's Sachs Butterfly House also shared collections with the Grafting the Grape exhibition. While most of us here are very pro-insect at the Garden, every once in a while, insects do act badly upon plants, specifically ones that are as economically as important as the grapevine is. The insects that we feature in this exhibition are ones, in fact, that can nibble and destroy and eat or even bring diseases to grapevines around the world. While Grafting the Grape exhibition features many grapevine species, we actually feature a handful of other plants too, specifically oaks. European oak and American white oak are often used to create barrels, which would age wine as it's fermenting to eventually be shared with the public. We also have several other wooden items from different types of woods that are used to make different material culture that goes along with wine serving and storing, such as corks and stoppers, that kind of round out the story of what all the different plants that are involved with making and keeping and preserving wine. The Grafting the Grape exhibition also features those things that we are probably most familiar with when it comes to storing and drinking wine today. The glasses that are used to drink wine come in all different shapes and sizes, depending on the concentration of alcohol. Sometimes you have a very small little glass for sherry or cordials that have a higher alcohol content but have a wine base. And then there's also white wine versus red wine, and those different glasses are different sizes because of the different types of aromas and phenols that are in the wine, and those flavors are the things that you're going to want to experience while you're drinking the wine. Bottling wine, and when you go to the wine store or to the liquor store and you decide on which drink you're going to be having that evening, this particular format of storing and selling wine has actually been most common since the 18th century. Once the industrialized glass was able to be produced in molds to allow for systemic sizes, it was a lot easier to bottle and sell and package and store wine in these forms. Several artists were invited to create artworks for Grafting the Grape. The team, Leigh Hahn and Lorraine Walsh, worked together to create digital artworks, film, and a sculpture to feature the intersection between grapevines, their environment, and climate change. One of the series of images features the bursting buds of an actual American grapevine. The background colors behind the bud bursts slowly get warmer from a very, very dark green to an almost hot yellow. And this progression actually addresses the climate change and the changing temperatures that our society is dealing with and that vintners are dealing with as they're trying to grow wine in warmer temperatures around the world. Some of the film work that was created includes a growing bud-burst grapevine, which is actually an homage to some of the early time-lapse film work that took place here at the museum in the 1920s by Arthur Pillsbury. And a live grapevine was photographed and turned into a short film, just like his films were of other large blooming flowers, such as daylilies. You can find more information about that on the Garden's blog. One of the other very large films that we have on display in the exhibition features actual digital machine learning. Leigh and Lorraine took the data from NASA satellite images and also some of the grape research that Allison Miller and her team at the Vitis Underground Project shared with us to turn into a growing grapevine environmental video. Leigh and Lorraine also fed in thousands of images from the Biodiversity Heritage Library online database, which the Garden participates in by sharing some of our rare books and images. And they created composite images using all of this data and ended up creating kind of new species of plants. This type of machine learning and digital technology sort of gives us an opportunity to explore how artists are in fact experimenting with scientific data. Leigh Hahn and Lorraine Walsh also created a sculpture that is in situ in the central gallery here at the museum, and it's called The In-Between. It features a minimalist wine trellis and beautiful laser engraved plexi panes, 2 rows. The upper row features hand drawings that were laser engraved onto the panes of a grapevine scion, so the plant that would be used for the graft. And the lower row features laser engraved drawings of the American rootstock. So the space between these 2 panes actually signifies the graft, that unique innovation that allows for us to be able to grow and drink wine made from around the world today. In the Sachs Museum's lower level gallery, we have an installation of 3 series by another artist that was invited to create work specifically for the Grafting the Grape exhibition, Dornith Doherty. Dornith created a photographic series of electron microscope scanned images of phylloxera galls. These phylloxera galls are magnified many, many times and have been printed in sepia tones to reference the 19th century photographic style, but on brushed aluminum, so they actually glow when you come upon them in the gallery. One of the films that Dorneth created actually is crafted from images of a Native American grapevine that she found growing nearby her home in Texas. And this series, this film features images that show the grapevine growing through the season, both in the spring as it starts to bud, in its full foliage and berry season, and then eventually also in the fall when it shrivels and dies for the season. And the third series that Dorneth has created includes scans that were shared by Dr. Allison Miller's Vitus Underground project. Keith Duncan, who was in charge of the imaging lab at the Danforth Plant Science Center, had scanned 3D images of several rootstock species, and Dorneth crafted multiple scenes from these scans into a film, so you can actually see these rootstocks in their full 360-degree view. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this visit to the Grafting the Grape exhibition at the Sachs Museum. The exhibition will be installed until March of 2022, and make sure to visit mobot.org/museum to access all of the digital content that will be related to the exhibition for the rest of the time that the exhibition's here.